This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
A key component to becoming a well-adjusted adult is having the proper guidance. Without direction, we wander around, never knowing if we're heading in the right direction, lost amongst the sea of misinformation and wrong turns. When we find something that appears correct, we latch on, hoping that this is the path. Only when we go a significant distance do we find out we went the wrong way. We must turn back and restart the journey. We are born with certain instincts, but those instincts do not include a compass. We can only rely on our influences at a young age. If our compass is broken, finding the right direction is going to be a long journey. I'm Kevin Donaldson, always here with Mike Felice, and welcome to the Suffering Podcast. If you're a fan of overcoming adversity and overcoming suffering, then we're for you, because that's what we do here, and that's the stories that we highlight. So do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, please comment, ring the bell so you can get notified of all of our new content, and now you can join. And of course, follow us on all social media so you can find out what we're up to. We got a special one. We got a traveler from the land of the unholy trinity, the Bruins, the Red Sox, and the Patriots, and that's Giamazzo. See, I butcher Italian names. So it's Denny Giamazzo, and we're going to talk about the suffering of confidence, because you had to fight your whole life in order to find that confidence. And I'm sure it's an ongoing journey, but you're better from where you started anyway. Thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Appreciate you having me. It was a fun journey down here. I don't know who drives worse, Massachusetts or New Jersey, but
oh no, so I'm going to take you down.
There.
I'll take you down to South Jersey, and when the Pennsylvania drivers come over on the shore, like the Avalon, Wildwood, Ocean City area, they are the worst drivers in the world. You put a circle in front of them, and it's like Big Ben Parliament from European vacations. Fucking horrible. Before we get into anything, let's throw a big shout out to our marquee sponsor. That's Toyota of Hackensack. We don't trust anybody as retired police. We certainly don't trust anybody as podcasters, but we do trust the guys over there at Toyota Hackensack. So if you're looking for a car, go to toyotahackensack.com and let them find you a car. So Denny, each week we take a question from our audience. This question comes from Sarah Smiles, and I took that one. I like that name because that was my grandmother's name. I think in life, we're all trying to find some sort of affection, some sort of connection, whether it's with a friend, whether it's with a child, whether it's with a spouse, or whether it's with a partner. We're all looking for love, right? We're all trying to feel what that feels like, because it's an addictive feeling. So Sarah writes, what is something that makes you feel loved? I'm going to leave this one to you.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I saw a quote recently that I really liked a lot, and it kind of spoke more towards like the relationship side of what love looks like. But it said, women need to be loved and men need to be respected.
I know exactly. Was it a woman doing a TED Talk?
I don't know.
Yeah, because I heard that same thing. Yeah,
but she has like an English accent, very beautiful, dark skin, dark hair. She's a doctor, like in psychology. But she said that, and I was like, that's spot on. So I think when I come across like maybe a relationship or even my friends, right? When they respect me and value me and make me feel like I'm contributing to their life and I'm touching people, that in turn makes me feel a lot of self-love.
Yeah, and that's usually the last thing to come along.
Yeah.
Right? It's learning how to love yourself. You can get pretty proficient at learning to love others or fake it, but learning to love yourself usually is the last thing to come around.
And that's where I've struggled the most, is loving myself. And so that's where I seek it, is in, kind of, again, sharing my story, helping as many people as I can. And, we like to say, Team Machine, my buddy Nick Lavery, is, we're in the impact business. And the more I do that, the more just general the love I feel.
So I think Johnny Lee put it the best. We're looking for love in all the wrong places. So when you're growing up, and if you go, and I know your story, you grew up in a chaotic household, and I did as well. So you start searching for love in comfort, right? You start, maybe this drug will make you feel comfortable. Maybe some alcohol will make you feel comfortable. Or maybe this woman who is not right for you will make you feel comfortable. So you're starting to look for love in all these wrong places. And guess what? 99.999% of the time, they never work out. When I started really finding what love is when I started accepting myself, I started accepting my past, I started accepting all the good and the bad, and it allowed me to unburden myself and forgive And then I was truly able to love myself. And what that did in turn is it allowed me the capacity to love other people. It took me a long time to get there. I'm 50 years old, and I'm probably 5 or 6 years in to being able to really love myself. So, and I'm still getting there. It's still a work in progress. But there's some key things that happened in my life that sort of broke me down and built me back up. But I think that's the problem with most people. You know, they look for love in all these wrong places, and they'll find it for a short period of time, and then that always falls apart. So Sarah Smiles, thank you for sending that question in. Keep sending in your questions, and we will try to get them on the air. So Denny, you traveled all this way, and I'm grateful for you. I've watched a couple things that you did. I know your story. But first, I want you to tell me a little bit about where you grew up and how you grew up, because that's the foundation to this whole thing.
Yeah, when you go that far back, it always is the foundation, right? So I was born Worcester, Massachusetts. My mom I was born 2 months early. Spent my first 2-3 months in the ICU as a baby. Tubes in my chest, couldn't breathe on my own. So, obviously, just right from the get-go there was some adversity there. Not that I remember it, but the doctor said I shouldn't have made it, and here I was. I made it, and spent the first 5.5 years with my biological mother while she struggled with addiction, struggled with prostitution and selling herself, because that was her job. That's how she made her money. So, yeah, I lived with her till I was about 5.5. Never met my biological father.
Now, your mother, she's into these things. What was, as far back as you can remember,
Sure.
What was her relationship with you? Did she try, or were you just there?
When she was there, it was very hot and cold. It was she could be wanting to hug me and cuddle me and show me all the love, or it could be, let me put cigarettes out on you, let me put your hand on the stove, and it could just be physical abuse, and it really just depended on whether or not she was on drugs, is I think, anyways, right? But I do remember two very different versions of her. I can remember laughing at her because she could be funny.
Mm-hmm.
She really didn't have a bad personality. She was very beautiful. Just, yeah, it was hit or miss on what it looked like. And
that confusion, though, it had to screw with you, because you never knew who was going to show up one day.
Yeah.
Was it going to be mom or the monster?
And there was so much of that growing up and we'll get into it later, but between her and my grandfather, my uncle, it was like these people, when they were on drugs or alcohol, you didn't know what you were going to get with them. And that's so unsettling for a young kid.
Because you're looking for stability as a young kid.
Stability, safety,
mm-hmm.
and you're not getting it, and you don't know if you're going to get it. Sometimes you're going to feel safe. Sometimes you're going to feel endangered, right? And like you said, you just don't know what you're going to get with somebody like that.
So when you grow up in that type of environment too, physiologically, and I know this through many years of therapy. I'm not a therapist, but it throws your nervous system into chaos. It's that hypervigilance, and there's a couple things, like situations like that can suit you in certain professions, very well,
mm-hmm.
but they can also be a detriment as well.
Well, that's a great way of putting it, because I think due to my childhood, that state of chaos became normal to me. And so later on in life, when I'm 23 and I'm in Afghanistan getting shot at, and we're doing the work over there and it's relatively chaotic, I could function.
You're used to it.
It was fine.
Yeah, it's another day at the office. Yeah, that's and it's funny how you see probably with a lot of police officers, and I'm pretty sure with a lot of vets, they didn't grow up with a silver spoon in their mouth. They didn't grow up as a senator's kid. They didn't grow. They're the people who this was a path to a career. Mm-hmm. Now you couple that broken foundation with some combat experience. It's a dangerous mixture, man.
Yeah, it's very different, and that's one of the things I picked up on when I joined the Army. It was that, most of the guys that I worked with, they didn't come from privileged backgrounds. They came from physical abuse, neglect, sexual abuse, whatever.
Mm-hmm. The privileged ones were the officers.
100%. And look, I had some great officers that I worked for, but generally speaking, the officers that I've worked for, and even the ones that I admire the most, mm-hmm. all had normal to privileged upbringings.
Sure, but it lays the groundwork. They can go to college, they can get that commission, there's a lot of different avenues. But when you came from nothing and you go into this, and they break you down to nothing. You're like, all right, well, I was nothing before I started. I'm nothing now. Who cares?
Exactly.
You know? And you just sort of power forward. But getting back to your childhood, you said for the first 5 years of your life, your mother was around.
Yeah.
What happened?
You know, when she would go to do her work, she would leave me in the apartment for like 3, 4, or 5 days, whatever it was. And I would just be there by myself. And sometimes the lights would be on, sometimes they wouldn't, depending on whether or not she paid the bill. But I would just sit there. I'd sit in this hard wooden chair staring out the picture window in the front of the apartment, just waiting for her to come home for a few days at a time. And I remember, I don't know if this was the qualifying event or what, that kind of had me taken away from her and put into foster care. But I do remember one of the social workers asking me, did you know that your mom left you for, several days at a time? And I remember even as a 5-year-old wanting to lie for her and being like, no, because it just seemed like
Still your
I
mom.
I knew it was wrong, but it was still my mom.
Yeah.
So again, I don't know that that's a qualifying event that kind of brought me out of her care and into foster care. But yeah, I mean, she was on drugs and definitely, obviously not treating me properly.
It's amazing what you can get used to. But it's all you know, right?
Yeah.
So if all you knew was every morning you woke up and got punched in the arm, if you didn't get that punch in the arm, you'd be like, well, where's my punch in the arm?
Yeah, yeah, and we just got done talking about chaos, and that gets very comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
You get comfortable in the chaos. That's the scary part is when it's normal and, and it's comfortable.
Yeah, until you step out of it. Like so what it sounds like to me, and please tell me if I'm wrong, I'm not trying to judge your past or anything, but you started off with a broken compass. How are you supposed to find your way if your compass is already broken? You're going to get into a situation where your compass is going to get recalibrated, and the next thing you know, you're like, oh, this is what it's supposed to be. And then how do you adjust to that? Now you got to readjust to everything that you ever knew. So you get taken out of that care, and where'd you get put?
So I got put into foster care, and I actually enjoy talking about my foster childhood or that part of my childhood, because my foster mom was incredible. She was. I went to one foster home for a couple weeks, and for whatever reason, I was only there for a little bit. But then I ended up at an incredible foster home with an incredible foster mom who was the first person at 5.5 to really show me what it meant to be loved and cared for by.
What was love to you at 5 years old?
Yeah, no. So she used to take me shopping for clothes that I liked. She'd cook meals that were really, really good instead of just, handing me whatever to eat.
Showing that you're important, I guess.
Every night we sat in this oversized recliner and watched Nick at Night with a bowl of ice cream, her arm around me. She'd just kiss my head and just hold me, and she was very special.
Did they have any biological children of their own?
They had 2 daughters. I still keep in touch with one of the daughters. Unfortunately, my foster mom passed away about 7 years ago, but, she was in my life until she passed away 7 years ago at my wedding. She was there when I got home from Afghanistan. She was at my high school graduation. So, and her and my aunt, who ultimately adopted me, got along very well. So, I was able to have both of them. My aunt as well, who adopted me, was such an amazing woman, is an amazing woman. So I didn't have a father, and I had a rough childhood, going through my teen years, but I had some incredible women in my life.
So then you have these pockets of love, and I've had enough children who have been in the foster care system, and it's a hit or miss.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So I had this one gentleman in here, Roman Prokopchik. He's from Ukraine, as a matter of fact. Him and his wife can't have kids, and she had a bunch of miscarriages, so they started fostering kids, and they wanted it to be a path for adoption. 30 kids in and out.
Wow.
Because every time the mother would lose the kids, they have the right to bring them back, and it's heartbreaking. Like fostering children, the people who do it with a pure heart. I can't even foster an animal because you fall in love with it and that's it, game over.
Right.
People who do it for the right reasons, I think it's one of the hardest things ever.
Yeah, and I didn't find this out until I was well into my 30s, but my foster mom and I, we used to hang out, have a beer here and there, and even though she was in her 70s, great shape, always just sit down and have a couple beers. And she told me, she said she wanted to adopt me when I was a kid, but my aunt wanted to, and she was my mother's sister, and everybody agreed that it made the most sense for her to do that. But yeah, she was fostering to adopt.
When you get involved as this woman did, what was her name?
Jackie.
I always want to give them the proper proper
Yeah,
credit.
she's the best.
So Jackie takes you and shows you a different side of life that you're not used to. And now, like, how long were you with Jackie?
About 2 years.
But so you have an established formative year between, say, until you're about 7, I guess.
Yeah.
Of this woman who really wants to do the right thing by you, who seems to really care about you and is invested in your upbringing. And then all of a sudden you're thrust back into your family, which you don't know what you're getting. Thankfully, it sounds like your aunt was pretty good.
Yeah.
But you don't know what you're getting. So now your temporary stability is gone.
Yeah, it was very weird. I remember when I found out that I was going to be heading out to my aunt's. She lived in a small town, 6,000 people in that town. But it was like a nice neighborhood with a lot of kids. So when I got there, I remember I always thought my aunt was just, maybe she just had a lot of money or way more money or whatever. But obviously I knew as a kid that something was different. Like she had done a lot better than my mom and my uncle and other members of the family. So. And she was super nice and kind, so I knew I was going into a situation where she loved me, but it was strange because, I still saw my mom at like holidays and things like that, and my uncle.
So your mother's still in the picture.
Oh yeah,
Oh wow.
Yeah, she ended up passing away when I was about 10, but she was in the picture my entire up until then for pretty much just holidays.
And when you saw her for those brief moments, what was her reaction? Was there sadness that she wasn't able to be with you anymore?
Yeah, sometimes you'd see that sadness. Sometimes it was just like it was almost like she was the aunt and my aunt was the mom.
No, really.
It was weird. It was a weird feeling, and I remember I just always had so much anger towards her, and it ultimately became like she was almost just like that stranger at the family functions instead of my mom.
Do you recall that moment? Because earlier on you said you would lie for your mom, and then before she passed, she was that stranger. Mm-hmm. When did the disassociation happen?
I can't pinpoint it, but I can probably say that it happened when I realized what it meant to feel love from my foster mom. So I think my foster mom was probably the one that showed me that my mom was a terrible mom. And she had her demons with addiction and things like that. We can talk about that later.
Your aunt did?
No, I'm sorry, my mom.
Your mom, okay.
Mom. Yeah. So, but I think that's when it kind of flipped the switch, is when like, okay, well, my mom didn't treat me like this. So I think that's where I decided, like, all right, she didn't care about me, so fuck her.
It's funny. I just put out a post the other day that said suffering can either open your eyes or blind you from the truth. So you could have gone the other way, say, it's my mom, that's who I'm going to stick with. But those years that you did spend with her kind of opened your eyes. And then once you got to your foster mom, Jackie, all of a sudden your eyes are wide open. You're like, oh man, this is what it's like. Okay, well, I like this a hell of a lot better than getting cigarettes put out and my hand put on the stove. So you kind of you roll with that. Now, what was your mom? Do you know what your mom now, what her drug of choice was?
Oh, geez. Heroin, definitely.
Yeah.
Because I remember seeing the spoons and stuff. So definitely that. Cocaine. I think she did it all.
I've never seen a drug more destructive than heroin.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, when I was brand new cop, okay, the town I worked in was the pipeline from the eastern part of Essex County to Pennsylvania. Now, you could buy a bag of heroin anywhere from $4 to $7 in the inner city and go out and sell it in Pennsylvania for $30. But they break the cardinal rule. They got high on their own supply. And my town was right in the middle where they pulled over. They always pulled over in one spot. It was a quiet spot. We knew where to look for them, and they would shoot up. So we roll up on this car, and I see 3 heads in the car. We get them out, bunch of heroin, and then I look in the back seat, and there's I don't even think the baby was 1.5, still in diapers. I never held a baby. I didn't have kids. Never held a baby. I picked the baby up, and it wasn't until I had kids that I found out how neglected this baby was, because as I pick it up, the diaper is so wet that it wets my arm. Now, those diapers can hold a lot. I've thrown my kids in the pool with a diaper, and it can hold a lot. So the fact that it was on there for a while, and I'm looking at this thing, and I'm like, oh, my God, like, you're going to do this in front of your child. And that's when I first realized how bad of a drug heroin is, that it'll make you neglect your own flesh and blood.
Yeah. So I've told this story before, but one time my mom, when I was still with her, maybe 4 or 5, she brought me to one of these places where she was going to meet her friends and do drugs. And she sat me down in this kitchen. And it was like a galley kitchen and just kind of a long kitchen or whatever. She sat me at the end of it in a stool. And then on the counter was a bunch of pornography magazines. And she told me to sit down and just read these magazines. And so I sat there. I read the magazines for a little bit.
Just the articles, right?
Just the articles, yeah. But eventually I got bored. So I left. I walked out into like the living room area where they were all hanging out. And to this day, I remember exactly what it looked like, seeing spoons on the table, tinfoil, needles, white powder, everything. And yeah, I mean, like you said, it's funny that they'll neglect you to go do their drugs. And that's what she did. She tried to just set me aside. And eventually one of her friends gave me a sip of his drink. It was like an orange drink, and it was terrible. I think it was like orange juice and vodka. Who knows?
Yeah, but it was orange juice, maybe methadone.
Could have been anything. And but it tasted like shit. But my mom flipped out when he gave me that drink, and they were fighting and rolling around on the floor, and it was like 4 of them, and all the chaos. But she was so pissed because even though she didn't want me to see it, she was willing to neglect me, stick me in the corner, and go do her drugs.
But it's crazy. There's no difference. I got. Do you have children? Okay.
No.
When you have children, I want you to notice something. You're going to take them out for Halloween, and you're gonna look at it like a proud parent. They're so excited to get candy. They're so excited to dress up. And what you're seeing now is these very selfish parents co-opting Halloween as a drinking holiday.
Yeah.
So you'll see them pulling wagons behind them. There's tons of beer in there, and they're drinking, and they're using it as an excuse to drink. So while it's not heroin or cocaine, it's still like these kids are watching you. Yep. They're watching what you're doing. And this is a holiday for them. This is their deal. Hey, adults have their Halloween parties and they're different, but this is for them. And these parents are so selfish that they just can't sit and enjoy watching their kids go house to house. It's mind-blowing to me, and I actually get aggravated every time. My kids are phasing out of the Halloween thing, but I would get aggravated to the point where I'd say something. I'm like, you really got to drink while your kid's trick-or-treating? What the hell's the matter with you?
Yeah.
Because I think I just don't think it's a right thing to do.
I mean, I don't disagree with you.
Yeah. But what's different between that substance versus the substance your mom was doing? There's no difference.
They're both drugs.
They're both drugs. Just one is legal and one is not legal unless you're in San Francisco. Then everything goes.
Yeah.
So you go back with your aunt and you find out all this stuff's different, but you said the trouble for you wasn't over.
No. So even though I was with my aunt and she was doing everything she could to show me love and care for me, and she did all the same things. She cooked good meals, brought me shopping, bought me whatever, shoes I wanted, whatever. If I wanted the new Jordans, I got them. She did a great job taking care of me. The only thing is she worked a lot. So when she was working, I went to my grandfather's. I'd go to my grandfather's when she was working, and sometimes I'd stay there for the entire weekend when she wanted to do things with her friends or whatever. Sometimes I'd stay there for like a week if we had February vacation or summers or whatever. But my grandfather was a really bad alcoholic, drank a lot, and he was a construction worker. So he would get up around 4:30 in the morning, and he would go work on this project called the Big Dig in Boston. If you Google that, it was a shit show of a construction project, but he was one of the operating engineers on it. So he would work all day, and then he'd get out around 2:30, shoot back to Worcester from Boston, and go straight to the VFW. And he would just drink.
So he's a vet too.
Yeah, he's a Korean War veteran.
Okay.
And he saw some shit and never talked about it, never wanted to or anything like that. But yeah, he'd drink all afternoon. He'd come home around 8:30, 9 o'clock.
The key component to any law enforcement officer being the best version of themselves is through education. Sherry Alsop is a leader in providing that education to police agencies, preparing them for the all too frequent dealings with sexual assault victims.
You've seen Sherry on episode 169 of the Suffering Podcast. She survived incest and almost daily sexual assault, so she comes from a place of experience and true understanding.
Sherry has the intelligence, commitment, and compassion to open the eyes of those on the front lines, while providing the tools to effectively deal with a difficult situation. Sherry's instruction comes from experience and multiple certifications.
Training with Sherry will offer on-site training, customized schedules, specialized instruction tailored from a victim's perspective.
You are going to hear Sherry's heart-wrenching but inspiring survivor story. Learn proprietary trauma-informed training techniques, uncovered victim-centered interview methods while earning continuing education credits according to your state guidelines. To be the best, you must learn from the best. Let Sherry also guide you through the delicate cases of sexual assault from a victim's point of view.
Be a source of comfort to those victims affected by these traumatic experiences while producing a solid investigation and uncovering details that often go unnoticed.
To find out more or to contact Sherry Alsop, go to sherryalsop.com. That's SherryAllsup.com.
And he would just tear the apartment apart. Flip the chairs over, rip the cabinets open. If I finished the last of the soda or whatever it was, or ate his food, he'd flip out about that. He'd go on about how useless I was and, I'm never going to do this or that or.
That's a shame, man. Grandparents are so even though my home life wasn't bad, at least I had a good grandfather. And because that's what's great in life. You've raised your children and now you just get to have fun with these brand new little children that you've forgotten about that were yours 30 years ago. And that's a sin. But, there's always a genesis to everything. Your mom's addiction, there's a genesis to it. Your grandfather's addiction, there's a genesis. It seemed to have skipped your aunt, but, listen, that's the roll of the dice. It can go one way or the other. Do you think that's where your mom got her addiction problems from?
Probably. I mean, to my mom's, I don't want to say credit or whatever, but her and my uncle both got into drugs and just were not the best of people. And they both had terrible upbringings. They didn't have much of a chance. And my aunt, for whatever reason, was able to, kind of overcome it and be the only one to graduate from high school and get a half decent job and to do good things. And I think it just came down maybe to her mentality, or I don't know, maybe she was just a little bit stronger than they were, but they didn't have it easy, none of them. I mean, we're talking generational trauma when it comes to my family.
Yeah.
My grandfather didn't have it easy, then my parents didn't have it easy, so it never got really that easy for anyone.
At some point you got to break the chain. Okay.
Yeah.
At some point, and it's hard to break that chain because the generational trauma has been going on for so long. Yeah. One of my good friends, he's a Hoboken native. His name's Benny Love. He always talks about breaking the chains. Benny Love used to be one of the, I don't want to say it because he was a bad dude back in the day. He was a real, everybody in Hoboken, yeah, Benny Love. But for his children, he's like, nah, it's time to break these chains. It's time to get things right. And thankfully, your aunt got custody of you and not your grandparents.
Yeah.
Because then you would have been right back in.
Yeah, there's no way that would have even been possible with how much he worked, and there was no grandmother there really. So
no, it was just him.
So my grandmother wasn't there at the time. They were separated. Part of the issue was she left my grandfather with these 3 kids when they were young.
Oh.
So my grandfather's off working. The kids are raising themselves. My aunt is basically raising the other 2.
She was the oldest.
Yeah. So I mean, again, none of them had it easy. It was just, tough, and I don't know.
Well, you can sympathize. So that's what they are. They're sympathetic characters because you see how it progressed. It's not like one day they were straight laced and then the next day that they were an addict. It comes from somewhere, and if you find out where it comes from, but it also helps you avoid those same pitfalls. If you see how that progress happens, you're actually fortunate in a lot of ways because you've seen both sides of it. You've seen the bad and the good, and it just makes you appreciate the good. Because that's the whole reason of this show. You can't appreciate anything unless you know the other side.
Yeah.
How many rich kids you see get drug problems? They had everything, right? They have drug problems. They have gambling problems. you know, there's no such thing as an easy life. And that's why I talk about this all the time, that you have to have that suffering in order to appreciate it, because it's going to make it so much better.
Yeah.
You know, if you haven't eaten in a while, that meal that you sit down and eat is going to be beautiful, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
Except liver, then you're screwed. What kind of trouble did you get in as a teenager?
I didn't really get in a ton of trouble until I was about 16, 17. I was in high school, and I got arrested so we were at a high school soccer game. Our girls team was playing our rival high school's girls team, and all the guys were there for us, and all the guys were there for them, and we were talking shit to each other, and because these are guys we played football against, we played basketball against, and we just hated each other. Yeah. And we had this spot that we partied in high school. It was called Auger Pond. It was a pond where we would drive our trucks up onto the ice and go ice fishing, and we had a bonfire set up. We had couches, chairs, this little area that we built that was ours, and that's where we would party and hang out. And we ended up going there after that soccer game, and we get there and the place was trashed, spray painted, just everything kicked over, chairs thrown in the water, all kinds of things. So we get there, it's trashed. And we decide we're going to drive into Putnam. We're going to go find these guys. We knew who they were. We knew what they drove. We're going to go get them. And so we drive.
Man, that's a recipe for disaster, brother.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 16, almost 17 years old. And, we end up finding them. Took us not very long. We found them in about 10 minutes. And we chased them. And then they drove into just a random driveway, pulled in. There was 5 or 6 of us, I think, and 2, 3, or 4 of them, I forget. But they would lock themselves in the car, and they wouldn't get out. So me and my friends thought it'd be smart to punch the windows out and pull them out. So that's what we did. We punched the windows out. We pulled them out. We beat the shit out of them. There was more of us than there were them. So it's cowards. We fought like cowards. But we ended up getting arrested. I got arrested 2 months after that. All my friends sang to the police. They told me they didn't use my name, but they did, which is fine, whatever. But I ended up getting arrested about 2 months later during basketball season. So now it's in the paper. Everybody's talking about the fight that happened 2 months after it happened. Luckily for me, I had already gone home and told my parents what happened. And look, this is what I did. And you might get a call. I might get arrested. I don't know. Some of my friends are getting arrested, just so you know. So when I did finally get arrested, my parents weren't surprised. There was no punishment because they'd already dealt with it. But yeah, it was embarrassing. Having my name in the paper and getting arrested for assault and battery and self-destruction of property and breach of peace.
That sounds like a colonial
There
law.
were a million charges, man. If I had been over 18, it was jail time.
So what came out of it?
I don't remember what the final charges were, but a bunch of them got dropped or reduced. And I ended up getting a little bit of probation. Connecticut had what was called the Youthful Offender Program because I was under 18. And so I got charged under that program, and I think it was sealed after, when I turned 18 or something. But I had to do some mandatory anger management classes and some mandatory, probation. And
it's amazing how all those ideas when you're young just seem like a good idea.
Such a bad idea.
And then when the rubber meets the road, but it could have gone 2 ways for you, right? Mm. So you have this history of chaos, of addiction. You have all that stuff. You're out with your friends. You make some poor decisions. There's a finality to it when you get arrested, and you could have used that as an excuse to continue that bad behavior, maybe fall into the same place that your family has fallen into. What kept you, or did you?
No, I didn't. I think after that, I pretty much, aside from getting arrested one other time when I was 23 for taking a piss behind a bar, that happens. I've been pretty much on the straight and narrow my life. It's just...
Was it because of that incident that you were on the straight and narrow? Because, listen, law enforcement, for whatever people say about law enforcement is meant to be corrective and not punitive. They're not here to punish you. They're here to correct bad behavior. And if a cop was able to correct bad behavior, it's a victory. It's a victory for them. It's a victory for you. So did that incident correct something?
I can remember feeling very embarrassed that my name was in the paper because we're from a small area, Tri-Town area, where again, my town was 6,000 people, and this shit's in the paper. My name's there. People are talking about it. It's being written about. Yeah, it was embarrassing, and I just didn't want that to ever happen again. And the only thing I guess positive that came out of that was, I mean, that was the second time in my life I ever had to use any type of be violent. And I've always said, like, it's good to be capable of violence, but you have to be able to control it.
That's where you should have heard the Instagram live I just did before the show. It's exactly what I talked about. Monsters are bad. We all know monsters are bad, but sometimes you need the monsters.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's great when you're capable of that, but I certainly didn't use it for the right purposes.
No, you're young. You're finding your way.
Yeah.
Thankfully, you did that bad behavior young enough where there wasn't long-term consequences. You do that shit over 18, you're in jail. Now all of a sudden you're slapped with that moniker, and
that's a totally different life that sets you up for.
Yeah.
So, and I think I knew that.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I got arrested right around 17, and I think that did kind of scare me in a way. Like, because if I had done that older, that I would have been a felon, and who knows what my life would be.
Being a felon, and we've had enough felons in here, it changes your whole trajectory of life. You have to put it on applications. You have to do everything you do.
Yeah.
So at some point, you need to move forward and find your path. You choose to join the military. Was it right out of high school?
No. So I went to college right out of high school. I did 3 years at Central Connecticut. When my fourth year came around, I couldn't afford it anymore. Didn't have the money to go. I couldn't get more student loans. So I decided I was going to take a year off. And my job all through college had already been working at Home Depot, either in the lot collecting carriages or in the lumber department or paint department. I always moved between those three things. But that fourth year, I was like, I'm going to take a year off. I'm going to work for Home Depot, and then I'll go back and I'll finish. And sometime within that year, I got recruited. A guy comes into the paint counter at Home Depot, and I must have been an easy target or whatnot, but he ends up recruiting me to go into the Guard in Massachusetts. And I didn't ask many questions. I was just like, what's the signing bonus? He said $20,000. I said, I want to finish my degree. And he said, all right, yeah, we'll give you $20,000 signing bonus. We'll pay off $20,000 of your existing loans, and we'll pay for you to finish your degree whenever.
Wow.
So I was like, holy shit. He threw a bunch of numbers at me that I liked, and I was like, where do I sign?
That's a pretty damn good deal.
Yeah. Yeah. It was right in 2006. So, I mean, Iraq was really popping off then, and the recruiting was going through the roof. So yeah, I joined in 2006. That was May 2006. I left for basic training and infantry school in August. And by November, there was a kid in my platoon who had told me that our unit was going to Iraq that following March in 2007. So I was getting excited because I'm going to get to the unit, we're going to mobilize, we're going to go to Iraq, and I'm going to get to do this job a lot sooner than I expected.
You probably had at this point a very romanticized vision of what war is.
Oh, yeah.
And reality sort of kicks you in the face. Now, your family, you enlist. What's your family got to say about it? Your grandfather, even though he's a bad alcoholic, he's still a vet, so there had to be something there.
At the point that I enlisted in the military, my grandfather had 5 years sober. So
great.
I want to make sure we get to that too, because he actually ended up being somebody very special to me later on. So he had about 5 years sober by the time I joined the Army, and he was incredibly proud.
Yeah, he was
very proud. So it was cool that to get his approval on that. So that was cool. My mom wasn't a fan.
Your aunt or your mom?
My aunt. My mom was passed away by this point. So she wasn't much of a fan, but she wasn't gonna make too big of a deal of it. She was proud of me still. But yeah, so graduated boot camp in December of 2006, and at the end of basic training, when I just got my infantry cross rifles, I was sent down to dental for a routine procedure to have my right wisdom tooth taken out. And so I get there, they pulled my right wisdom tooth, and they didn't give me an antibiotic after they did it. They just gave me Tylenol with codeine, and it ended up getting infected. So the infection spread through my throat and began closing my airway. So 3 days later, I'm in the ICU. They flew my parents down to Fort Benning.
What, they think you were going to check out?
I did check out twice.
No shit.
Yeah, I flatlined twice in 2 different surgeries
From a dental procedure.
During the
I went to war, almost died from war. No, dental procedure.
exactly, dude. It was
crazy.
It was the craziest thing. They flew my parents down. They didn't think I was gonna make it. They brought a priest in. It was some wild shit. So that was in December, right days before Christmas. And then I finally get to my unit in the end of February, and I still had this open trach. And
Oh, they trached you. Ooh.
oh yeah, I had a trach. That's like, it was closing my airway. They had to, and so I get there, and my first sergeant noticed that I had like a little bit of blood that had come through the dressing, and we're talking about going to Iraq. We're talking about what's coming down the pipe, and he noticed the blood on my shirt, and he goes, "You're not fucking going anywhere." And so I missed the Iraq deployment, and yeah, that was tough, and just overcoming that injury was tough. It took like 7 to 8 months to, have that close up, get physically strong again, be able to run again.
Well, what was harder, watching your buddies go off, or these wounds healing?
It was tough watching them go, because I wanted to go, and I know they all wanted to go, so they got to go, and me watching them was tough. But it's just what it is. I wasn't physically strong enough to go. Medically, I wasn't going to get cleared to go. So at that point, my purpose in the military just became, I need to recover to get back to the point where I am operational again. And 3 years later is when I got my chance, and I worked my ass off during that 3 years to get promoted early and prove to my unit that I was an asset. And they promoted me ahead of some of my peers who went on that deployment. I was promoted ahead of some of those guys who had already gone to Iraq and in charge of some of them.
That's a tough thing too, because I've heard enough vets talk about that when they have combat experience, and then all of a sudden somebody gets promoted over top of you who does not have combat experience. It's a whole respect thing that's kind of sketchy there for a while.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there were guys who would say it to me, like they weren't shy. But look, I got the promotion, I got the stripes, and like it or love it, I mean, it is what it is.
Sometimes you got to drop your ego and just.
Yeah, and you know what? Part of that meant I needed to drop my ego too, because they did have some experience that I didn't have, so I needed to leverage them.
Yeah.
In some ways to make myself better and more effective as a leader. So that went both ways.
All right, but now it's go time. Now it's time. Yep. You're getting deployed. You're going over to Iraq, Afghanistan, and now you're going to see the reality of all this shit.
Yeah.
So prior to getting deployed, what was your idea of war? I mean, you had heard enough stories, so you probably had a little bit of knowledge, but you didn't have the actual presence.
I was afraid of it, but I wanted it. Because I wanted to know how I would react in combat, in that situation of, being under the stress of fire and having to take charge of a particular element. And could I think and could I make decisions that would be the right decisions for the people around me?
You never know what kind of person you are until you're put under that stress. I mean, you can prep for it all day long. Just a quick story. During my shooting, I'm under fire, and one of the supervisors runs away. And he was Mr. Military. He would say, hoorah. I'm like, relax, dude. You're in the Air Force. No, just kidding. Any Air Force guys. But he ran away and left me for dead. Thankfully, there was other 2 people that came up and took care of stuff. But there's no way to know until you're there.
That's 100% true. So there was one particular mission where we were doing an assessment of a village, and as we were deciding, how we were going to insert this village, because it wasn't really part of the mission, I don't think, that day. I think we decided to do it kind of on a whim because we were going through, and we were like, yeah, we're going to stop at this village, do a key leader engagement with the village elders. And so we get there, we're standing around, myself, my platoon leader, the mission commander, my best friend Mike Burns, who was our platoon sergeant, and we're sitting there and we're wondering how we're going to do this. And so they decided that the best way to do this would be to set up an Overwatch element and they put me in charge of that Overwatch element. So I had a sniper team, my truck, gunner, driver, myself, and the sniper team. It was just the 5 of us kind of on this hill. Not a great sniper position, but a good Overwatch position. Gave us good vision into the village. So I was pissed because they put me in charge of the Overwatch position. I wanted to go in to the village and do the infill with my guys and everybody like I typically would. Set up a perimeter, set up security, and kind of be a part of that element. So I remember being upset that they put me in charge of that because I thought they would just put me up there to babysit. It wasn't until, honestly, years later where I had a conversation with my best friend Mike, and he was like, dude, we put you up there because you were capable. And as I tell you the story, you'll learn that I was capable. But so I was in charge of that Overwatch position, and we had another truck facing down into the village. And next to their truck was a hut, part of the village, one of the buildings, and there was movement on top of the roof next to their vehicle. And I wasn't sure if their gunner could see it because it looked like he was facing the other way. So I wanted to let them know that there was movement on top of that roof. I didn't want them dropping a grenade on him or something like that. So I couldn't get them on the radio to let them know what was going on. So I started walking from my position to their vehicle, maybe 50 meters at most. And I get about halfway there, and the radio starts to work. So I get them. I let them know what's going on. And, of course, they say back, yeah, we saw it. No big deal. So I turn around. I start walking back to my vehicle. Seconds later, I'm in the open. I have no cover. I just start getting lit up. Rounds are impacting around my feet, whizzing past my face. Actually, I got to back up. So before that, I even started getting shot at, I had an RPG fired in my direction. That exploded, felt that concussion. Then I started to take a knee. And I was scanning, looking to see, maybe where that was coming from. That's when my position, when I was on a knee, I started getting lit up, and all these rounds and dirt started impacting around me. So being in an open position, I just got up, sprinted behind my vehicle, and kind of took charge of that element and kind of let my gunner know where I thought I was being shot at from. He started lighting up that building. Then the sniper position or Overwatch position, they had little to no cover. Their position starts getting lit up, and I still say it to this day, I don't know how either one of those guys are alive.
Those rounds start going off.
Yeah.
Can you remember what your demeanor is at that point? Were you anxious? Were you scared? Were you calm? Like, what was...
I stayed relatively calm.
It's crazy how that works.
It's funny because, you do get anxious, but at the same time, it's like, okay, well, I still have to function. Mm-hmm. And so, especially once I got behind the vehicle and my vehicle's getting lit up, the sniper position's getting lit up, I'm still like, holy shit, like, this was a lot of gunfire coming our way. And I just remember being like, well, still, I need to function because...
But you had that confidence in your abilities. And that, and so, again, there's enough people in this world that would go behind their vehicle, sit there, hide, and wherever they're safe, and never take the opportunity to re-engage. They're out there, and and I'm sure you've seen them.
Well, and here's the thing: I told you earlier about how that RPG went off, and then we started getting assaulted. While we're getting assaulted, they're also taking it in the village. So it was that RPG initiated a complex attack. So it was attack on our position as well as in the village where they were. And where they were in the village, we had a guy who just got down, would not fire his weapon, just couldn't function. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't there to see it. But I've heard it from several guys that were there, and it's just unfortunate. And you don't judge a guy like that. You don't say, you don't have much to say about it. It's just, that's just the unfortunate reality of it.
Not everybody's made for that stuff. They just aren't. They just aren't.
I think most guys can do that. I think most people are built in the way that they can react in the proper manner, but some people just can't.
Some people are actually better in the chaos than in the quiet.
Yeah.
And from the way you grew up, it's sort of, you've been trained for this your whole life. You've been trained in this chaos. You know what it feels like. It becomes familiar. Yeah. See, the problem is when people experience something for the first time, they normally revert to how children act. You get hurt. What's a child do when they get hurt? They cry. Men, when you're a fully grown man, You don't cry anymore, but you get angry, scream, yell, all sorts of stuff. But if you as a child had that chaos and you have that calm during the chaos, now all of a sudden you have the confidence to know that I did all this stuff. I know what this feels like, so I can sort of operate. But the reason I ask you that is because I had the same thing. You know, bullets start flying and everything quiets down. It's like your ears shut off. You go to the range, you're wearing ears, right?
Yeah.
Well, you're not wearing ears out there, but were your ears ringing?
I supposedly have some hearing loss in my right ear, just based off the test they give you. But I feel like I can hear fine.
Did you ever do this in the range? Like we used to do it indoor. We did outdoor too, but we did indoor. And I always used to take my ear like this just to get a taste of it.
Yeah.
And your ears would ring for 30 seconds
fucking
afterwards.
loud.
It's very loud. But during the actual event, because your body physiologically starts protecting itself.
Yeah, like I mean, I definitely didn't have any air protection in, and I fired a lot of rounds right next to my head, and there were guys firing a 50 cal. Like eventually, that sniper team lit up that building too, and they were firing a Barrett 50 cal sniper rifle into that building, and so there was a lot of chaos that day, a lot of shooting.
So
and
don't leave me in suspense. Did you make it?
oh yeah.
You're killing me, man. I'm waiting for the end of this story.
It's funny because like I said, we just our sniper team just kept barraging that fucking building. Our 240 gunner was lighting up that building, and then I was just shooting at anything that I could find to shoot at that was moving. And yeah, it was fine. Like we never even went back into that building to check it out or anything. The objective was to secure that area because that's the way we needed to leave. And the guys in the building, they had guys from SEAL Team 8 with them, and they were peeling off, and they're just doing their thing, and they're trying to get out. So we basically pulled security, pulled all the trucks up, and secured that area so we could get everybody out. Because our area was the exfil. That's where they had to go to get out of the village.
So if you think about those people who were shooting at you, those people had some big balls. I'm going to tell you what, you go up against the U.S. military. Think about that.
Well,
these guys they're not trained military, but they're vicious.
Well, the crazy part is eventually we get them out of the village. They load up. We decide we're going to go around the backside of the village to leave as a convoy. I think we had 7-8 vehicles. And as we're leaving on the backside of the village, we had the high ground. They're down here. They started fucking shooting at us again.
Yeah, they got balls.
We turned our vehicles into the village. Our 240 gunners, everybody's lighting this village up. The guys, we had a truck full of SEALs. They get out. They start chasing them. They radio to me, hey, put together a team. Come connect with us. I put together a team. So this whole engagement took about 3 hours from inception to the end of the second engagement. So we got engaged twice. So not only did they have the balls to shoot us the first time, we're trying to leave, and they won't even let us leave. They're shooting at us some more. So like we got out and we chased them, and yeah, that was a hell of a day.
What type of feeling do you have towards the people who were shooting at you?
That was their job.
When you turn,
they were doing their work.
They were doing what you guys were doing on another side. And I'm not trying to discount the fact that they were trying to kill you. That's not what I'm trying to do. Whether you're on an adversarial side or whether they're on your side, you guys shed blood together. And I'm always interested in that. Like when the war's over, when the battle's done, would you be able to sit down and have a cup of coffee at that same guy who fired at you, knowing you fired at them?
Yes.
Yeah.
And here's why. And I don't know if other guys would agree with this or not, but imagine somebody else comes into this country and starts taking it over and telling us how to live and telling us what to do. You think we're not going to be fighting for it?
Of course.
I mean, say what you want, but that they did what they felt like they needed to do, and you got to respect them for it.
Yeah, that's why I always love, years later when soldiers...
I didn't feel that way then.
No, of course not. Of course, yeah, you get around.
I just wanted to shoot them all in the face.
But you have years after a war's over, both sides, they meet each other. I was just watching some World War II vet, I think he was British, and he sat down and had lunch with a Nazi soldier. And they just sat there and talked about why he was doing what he was doing, why he was doing what he was doing. And they came out of it with a mutual respect. You guys did your job. You fought for your country. You did what you're supposed to do. And I think that's really cool because it kind of brings everything full circle.
Yeah.
So how long were you in the military?
I was in for 7 years.
You were in for 7 years. When was it time to leave?
So for me, it was time to leave. When I got back from Afghanistan, I had about a year left. So I was about my 5-year mark. I had a year left for, I had a little less than a year left. I had maybe like 8 months left. But I needed shoulder surgery. I fucked my shoulders up overseas, and I ended up needing 2 shoulder surgeries. So when my 6-year mark came up, they extended me on a medical. And at the same time, I was starting to get strong again. I was starting to feel good. And I had an opportunity where I could try out for a 20th Special Forces group. So I was either going to stay in and try out for 20th Special Forces group, or I was getting out. Because just being an infantry guy wasn't enough for me anymore. I needed more chaos. I needed to do something cooler, funner, because
Next level.
I just really enjoyed the work. And if I was going to do it, I wanted to do it on the highest level. And so my ex-wife and we had a talk, and she just basically decided that she didn't want to be an Army wife anymore. And I totally respected that. Like, she's totally entitled to not want to live that life.
She came out and told you that.
Oh yeah, she said, "Look, I don't want to tell you what to do. I don't want to crush your dreams or anything, but I really just don't want to do this. I want us to have a family. I want us to."
Wow, that's an incredibly respectful way to do it.
Oh,
I'm sure it hurt. I'm sure it hurt.
No, she. I have no hard feelings or anything. That wasn't part of the plan from the beginning. So when me bringing it up after the fact was kind of like, it'd be great if she supports this, but if she doesn't, you just got to kind of respect it. And that's kind of how I felt about it. We had the discussion. I think maybe if I pushed a little harder, it could have been, but who knows? But yeah, no, I had that opportunity, and it was either go all in and do the hard stuff, or it was time to get out.
So what did you choose?
I got out.
You got out.
I got out. I did 6 years, 9 months. So after I was cleared medically, I was able to get out right away. I didn't have to do like the last 3 months of my contract or whatever. They just let me out.
Now you come back to civilian life. You come home to your family. They got to be very happy that you're home, safe, no holes in you. And I want to bring up your grandfather again. So he was in Korea, and from talking to Korean vets when I was younger, Korea was brutal. Korea was nasty, brutal, and far worse than a lot of people, because there's not a whole lot of them around. So it's not as talked about as World War II or Vietnam.
Yeah.
Sort of that in-between war. Did he look at you a little different?
I remember one of his first questions was asking me if I got my combat infantry badge. And I was like, yeah, I got it. And he's like, good. That means you weren't just over there playing with yourself. Or something like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, but he was proud that, again, not only that I served, but he was proud that, I earned that award as well.
Yeah, you don't want to go over there and peel potatoes or
Yeah.
I was the cook,
Yeah.
I was the guy doing the laundry.
Once he wasn't drinking anymore, our relationship was so much better. He was very supportive of me, and just a different guy.
Did he ever talk to you about why he was drinking so much? No, just never.
He was like what I like to call like just a man's man, right? Never showed you anything. You might have caught glimpses of a little bit of humanity out of him, or a little bit of kindness or whatever, softness, but he wasn't built that way.
See, I always say that about my Uncle Duke. My Uncle Duke was prisoner of war in Germany for 27 months. And growing up, I was always told, his name was George, everybody called him Duke. Duke's just a drunk. He would fight, never married, drink like a fish. Gee, what's that sound like? What's that sound like? That sounds like post-traumatic stress. And obviously, undiagnosed back then, it was battle fatigue, whatever you want to call it. But,
yeah.
After he got out of prisoner of war camp, he re-enlisted and went in Korea. So talk about a man's man. But I remember years later, somebody was talking to me about him. He passed in 2005. And somebody said, Duke was just a drunk. And I said, don't you ever say that again. Because this was after my shooting, and I had the burden of knowledge. I said, don't you ever say that about him again. That man endured things that you can't possibly imagine. And I'd have to probably think that's your grandfather's damage. He endured things that you can't possibly imagine. And you being a young man, why would you, the old guard used to think, well, why would I burden him with that stuff? It doesn't make sense. So what'd you get into when you got out of the military?
Yeah, so as soon as I was pretty much done with the military, I went back to school.
as you promised.
As
That's good.
I had it in my head, I have to finish my degree. That's the whole reason I joined the military, right?
Yeah.
At least that's the reason I initially joined it. It became about much more, obviously, with the brotherhood and stuff like that. But went back to school, finished my degree. I got my degree in political science. The idea was that maybe I could go to law school, but I ended up getting a job at Oracle, tech company.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's funny. A couple years before, right when I started going back to school again, I had some friends that worked at Oracle in sales, and they did really well, made a lot of money. And so I asked them if they could get me a job, and they were like, "No, man, you don't have a degree," but they like to hire vets.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was back in school, that whole 2 years that I was finishing up my degree, I had it in my head that I wanted to work for Oracle and that I was going to get that job. So I was working 6 days a week. I was going to school full time, summers, winters, just doing all the work I needed to do. And I graduated. I finished my degree in like December, and I got my interview at Oracle same month. And I think I started that March of the next year.
So at this point in your journey, this point in your life, things are going pretty well for you. You're a military vet, you're a combat vet.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You have the job that you want. You have the degree that you want. Your grandfather's sober. You're starting to become a more personal person of importance in your life. Your aunt's still around. What's your confidence like? Is you still got collateral damage from your youth?
No, I think at this point, man, it was starting to feel pretty good because, once I had the job, I had the degree, I had, my family, like you said, my grandfather's sober, and I have my aunt, my foster mom still in my life. I was married.
Things look pretty good.
Things were feeling very good and very safe for a while.
Was it the right place to look for love and all those things?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
And I was getting all of the things that I had really felt like all I could ever dream of, right? Somebody with my background and where I come from, it was like, for me to have a degree and be a combat vet and have, beautiful wife and 3,000 square foot house and $80,000 truck and, all these things that nobody in my family, I don't think, had ever seen before, right? Mm-hmm. It was very good, but also like it was almost a cross between like comfortable and discomfortable at the same time, uncomfortable at the same time.
Was it that you felt like you didn't deserve this stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I would work my ass off to get these things. And then once I had these things, it was like, okay, well, I got it, but do I deserve it?
Yeah, that's a tough pill to swallow when you feel like, because that's your broken childhood. Yeah. So, because I'm not comparing my childhood to yours, but it's something in you that's broken that says you're never good enough. You're never worthy of anything that you accomplish. So you got to over-accomplish. Then you become an overachiever because you're constantly trying to chase that acceptance.
Right.
And that was me anyway. So none of that was what you wanted. None of it felt right.
It was everything I wanted.
Yeah.
But I wasn't comfortable with success, and I wasn't comfortable with, love. Even though my wife and I had been together, I think 10, 12 years at that point, at the point we separated or whatever. But I just wasn't comfortable with the idea that somebody actually cared about me, a woman.
Well, your archetype for a woman is totally broken from your mother. Mm-hmm. No matter what your aunt did and what your foster mom did, your primary imprint of what your mother did kind of skews your view a little bit.
It destroyed it.
Yeah,
it destroyed it. I don't think I really started to understand the impact that my mom had on me until more recently. Maybe the last 2-3 years.
What happened in the last 2-3 years?
Therapy, lots of therapy, lots of like actually digging and doing the work into like why do I not trust a single woman in my life, a woman that like genuinely cares about me and wants good things for me and wants to be a teammate, right? Like why am I not so unaccepting of that, right? And just doing that work.
Let me ask you this. This is an odd question. When's your birthday?
December 15th.
What do you feel when somebody wants to celebrate your birthday?
I don't give a fuck about my birthday. I don't care about my birthday. I hate Christmas.
You want to talk to my wife right now? Because she'll say the same thing about me.
Really?
She will say the same exact. I hate my birthday. I have young children, so I have to fake it.
Yeah.
I have to fake it. I just don't like those things. I'm like, hey, you know what the hell? I don't really give a shit. You know,
Right.
it's another year going by. But it's something broken in you that says that you're not worthy of people celebrating your life. People celebrating with each other, you know, just being happy. Because you watch other people do it and you're like, what the fuck are you doing? It doesn't make sense to me. But it's something broken inside of you. But what do you think that therapy taught you to sort of ease all this stuff?
I think I learned that going back to my childhood and, you know, really responding to trauma and difficult situations is, you know, I go back to just that child in me.
Mm-hmm.
I go back to that 13-year-old depressed version of me, or angry version of me, or immature version of me that just wants to run from the pain and doesn't really understand it. But I also learned that I just need to be, you know, that I'm a human being. I need to give myself grace and understand that I make mistakes. And, you know, although it's good to have high standards for myself, you know, I need to understand that I'm going to make some mistakes too along the way. And
those are the things that teach you the most.
yeah.
Your victories don't teach you that much because it's easy to win. You know, nobody has to train to win. You got to train to lose.
Yeah.
You know, those losses, getting yourself back up, all of those things, all those motivational bullshit that you see on social media, that stuff, that's where the work sets in.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is you have now that broken foundation, you've leveled it right to the ground, and you're starting to build yourself up. And that's what it takes, right? It takes, you gotta demolish everything and start building something solid on firm earth.
Yeah. And that's what I did about 3 years ago after my divorce. I spent about six months or so feeling sorry for myself, drinking a lot. And then it was time to be like, all right, well, you fucked that up. It's time to, you know, really figure your shit out and become a person of high value again. Start to love yourself again, respect yourself again. And, you know, I put together a system for myself that, you know, things that I follow every single day and things that I think about constantly.
You want to give some of them out?
Yeah, I actually built my podcast off of it called Be the Standard. And basically I set high standards for myself, created habits for myself, executed on the things I said I was going to do. And then lastly, accountability. I held myself accountable to all of the things that I said that I would do. And they're all tangible. They're all notes that I have.
Sounds like you took ownership of your past.
Yeah, I had to. I wasn't being a good friend. I wasn't being the best employee. I was being a shitty husband. I was, you know, and again, I took 6 months to feel sorry for myself, to drink, to be an idiot, to date, to whatever, to date without intention, if you want to call it that, right? You know what I'm talking about.
I get you.
To just be foolish. And then it was time to get my shit together. And
so that's a cool thing. So, you know, all that stuff that's going on in your life, that drinking portion, the feeling sorry for yourself portion, I bet you were full of excuses. I'm drinking because my childhood was shit. I'm drinking because my wife left me. I'm drinking because of this. I'm drinking because of this. And you take that time to build up all these different excuses, when in reality, you had to look in the mirror and say, well, that's kind of the reason why all this stuff has happened. And once you take that ownership, stuff changes overnight. It's crazy the way it works.
Absolutely. And something I say pretty often is that your excuses are pre-programmed. Before you start the poor behavior, the excuses are already there. You know when you're doing these things, like, all right, yep, I left my wife. I was a fucking shitty husband. I was an idiot. Right. Check.
Mm-hmm.
I was a shitty employee. Check. You know, all these mistakes that I made, right? I was actually a good employee in the sense of like delivering to the business. I was a poor employee in the sense of like not being as respectful to the work as I should have been. Because the point is I could have been even better. But I was off being an idiot instead of focusing on the work.
Yeah, you leave stuff on the table all the time, but what that can do is propel you to something better in the future.
Sure.
You know? So, Denny, listen, we are coming to the end of this thing here. And the way that I really enjoy the term be the standard, because that's what I try to be for my kids, right? I want to be that standard that they can exceed. You know, listen, this is where you get here and then go past me, blow past me when you get there. But at least you have a marker for where you want to be. And that marker, I never had that marker. So I'm trying to be that standard for them. Just like one day you know, the people who you inspire, the people who you talk to, you are that standard. Okay, get here, but don't ever be afraid to just lift people above you, because that's what you want. You want them to win. Too many people, their egos get in the way, and they don't, you know, as soon as somebody gets ahead, they try to pull them down.
Yeah. No, I want to see as many people win as I possibly can. And if you can do light years more than I can or be that much better than me, I love it.
I'm proud of that stuff. So you want to plug anything? You got anything? Give out your social media?
My podcast called Be the Standard. I'm on YouTube and Spotify. Be the Standard Podcast on Instagram. My name's Denny Giamazzo. You can follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn. I love the engagement. I love interacting with people. So reach out to me, and if you want to be a guest or anything like that. But I appreciate you having me, man. So
I take this opportunity to talk about your entire life in this one sentence. You went through a lot of different suffering, whether it's how you grew up or whether how your grandfather treated you, or moving foster homes, or you pick one. Yeah. You know, there's plenty of suffering that went throughout your life, to even finding your confidence later in life. But it had to teach you something, because suffering without learning anything from it is a wasted opportunity. So if you took your suffering in your life, what do you think it's taught you personally?
You know, something I said to myself a lot as a kid that I say often a lot now when I do speaking engagements and different things is, you know, there's always somebody who's been through something harder. They've come back stronger, and they're doing more with less. So my story's not unique. My pain's not unique. My adversity's not unique. But the way I reacted to it and the attitude that I continue to bring every day, and that I had even as a kid, that I can be better than that. That's the differentiating factor. Your reaction to the pain is the differentiating factor, not the pain itself. You're not special because you went through some shit. You're just like everybody else.
What you tend to do with that pain, that's what separates you from everybody else.
1,000%.
I really appreciate you, Denny. Thanks for coming in. And listen, I want to hear what you're doing next. Once you're in here, one of the things that Mike and I always preach is, once you're in here, you're part of our family, and we want to see you succeed. And if there's something you're succeeding at, we can share. I'll be more than happy to do it for you, brother.
Love that. Same. Right. Thank you.
And that's going to do it for this episode of The Suffering Podcast, The Suffering of Confidence with Denny Giamazzo. And let's think about all the stuff that we learned. Chaos can become normal. It's unthinkable to deny your own flesh and blood. You never know what type of person you are until the shit hits the fan. We don't know what we want, even when we get it, but most importantly, be the standard. And that's going to do it for this episode. Don't forget to go to popple.com, put in the code TSP20 for a 20% discount on your digital business card. Follow us on all social media. That's LinkedIn, X, Facebook, Instagram, Clapper, OnlyFans. Follow me at Real Kevin Donaldson, and of course, follow the Suffering Podcast, and we'll see you on the next episode.